Good evening. The headlines tonight, Tuesday the 29th of August 1939. Hitler's reply to Britain's warning has been received in London. It's being studied by Mr. Chamberlain and his ministers in Downing Street at the moment. The Queen has returned to London, but she's left the little princesses at Balmoral. The call is going out for stretcher bearers and first aid workers.
They are wanted immediately for training. We appeal also to women car drivers. If you can drive a car, you can be trained to drive a light ambulance.
And there's been heavy flooding in the Midlands after the worst rain for 30 years. Tonight in Downing Street, advisers are studying the first details of Herr Hitler's reply to the British warning about Poland. The German statement, 9 pages long, we understand, has been telegraphed from Berlin and is being decoded at the Foreign Office and passed page by page to Downing Street at the moment. Its contents, Mr. Chamberlain told the House of Commons this afternoon, will determine whether Europe will remain at peace or go to war. Our diplomatic editor Christopher Lee reports.
In Whitehall, it's been a day of waiting for Germany to respond to Britain's insistence that there should be direct negotiations with Poland. And within the past hour, we've heard that Sir Neville Henderson, Britain's ambassador in Berlin, has been called to the Chancellery, presumably to receive that reply. The Prime Minister, Mr. Chamberlain, told the Commons this afternoon that there was still hope of what he called an equitable settlement of Polish-German differences. However, with German press reports reaching London of the alleged murder of German nationals in Poland, there are some who predict Herr Hitler's demands will be severe. Informed opinion is that in response to Britain's insistence for a negotiated settlement, he may well impose time penalties that will be difficult to meet. As the waiting in Whitehall continued, curiosity surrounded the return of Sir Neville's aircraft from Berlin to England. On board were 3 men, but airline officials refused to identify them. However, I do understand that one of them was Sir Paul Dukes, a former head of Britain's secret intelligence service in the Soviet Union.
It's believed tonight that if Herr Hitler is to agree to a negotiated settlement, then he may insist on a partial revision of the Treaty of Versailles. Charles Wheeler now reports on the latest situation in Berlin.
Diplomatic sources in Berlin say tonight's meeting between the British ambassador and the German Chancellor was stormy. I understand that Hitler accepts the British proposal for direct negotiations between Germany and Poland, but that he has imposed one critical condition. A Polish emissary, armed with full decision-making powers, must be in Berlin tomorrow. It's expected that later tonight, this latest German demand will be communicated by Sir Neville Henderson to his Polish colleague. Neutral diplomats here are predicting that Warsaw will regard it as an ultimatum. There have been major German troop movements today from Austria into nominally independent Slovakia, which is now effectively under German military rule. Messages from Bratislava say the town has become an armed camp with up to 80,000 German soldiers fanning out along Poland's southern border. In Germany itself, the sudden introduction of food and clothes rationing has caused a run on the shops. In Berlin, bread, tea, coffee and fats are all in short supply. Shoes are unobtainable, and soap is reserved for babies under 2, coal miners and chimney sweeps. The government has told the general public to avoid getting dirty.
Charles Wheeler reporting from Berlin. Here, the House of Commons was summoned this afternoon, 2 days earlier than planned. Mr. Chamberlain told MPs, "We still hope and work for peace." But there was in the country a general state of readiness for war. And he urged the press to exercise the utmost restraint. Referring to reports which had speculated on the contents of Britain's communication to Berlin last night, he said it was unfortunate that journalists could, with a few thoughtless words, wreck the whole of the government's efforts. Our political editor, Christopher Jones, was in the House.
Mrs. Chamberlain and the Prime Minister drove this afternoon from Number 10 for a special Commons sitting that lasted for precisely 55 minutes. Mr. Chamberlain told the packed, tense House that although catastrophe was not yet upon us, I cannot say that danger has in any way receded. His message, to immense cheers from all sides, was Britain is ready. The fleet is at war stations. The army at home and abroad at full strength. The Royal Air Force is at instant war readiness now. Anti-aircraft and civil defence on a war footing. Britain said the Prime Minister was calm, united, determined and confident. We will still hope and work for peace, but we will abate no jot of our determination to hold fast to our principles. Mr Attlee, the Socialist opposition leader, is still unwell after his operation, but his deputy, Mr Arthur Greenwood, guaranteed his party's inflexible determination to defend liberty. He hoped the door of peace would be closed fast upon the angel of death. But disagreement with the government from Mr Greenwood and the Liberal leader, Sir Archibald Sinclair, who both said children must be evacuated from big cities now.
Otherwise, said Mr Greenwood, the responsibility for the deaths which are caused would be upon the government and not upon the opposition.
However, the Prime Minister has said tonight the evacuation of women, children and the handicapped from the major cities and towns will not take place yet. He told Sir Walter Citrine and Herbert Morrison, who led a trade union and socialist delegation to Downing Street, that the situation was, as he put it, well before our minds. The Queen returned to London from Balmoral this morning. She's now at Buckingham Palace with the King. And tonight there is news that the Duke of Windsor has appealed for peace to King Victor Emmanuel of Italy.
The decision by Queen Elizabeth to come back to London meant that the family holiday came to an end earlier than expected. It also meant that there was no time for the royal train to be sent up to Scotland. Instead, a special saloon was attached to the regular overnight express from Perth. The Queen's unexpected appearance at Euston in the middle of the rush hour delighted early morning commuters. The staff of University College Hospital poured out onto the street to greet her as she went past. She was driven straight to Buckingham Palace. The King has been back in London for more than a week. It is understood that he decided to cut short his holiday after discussing the growing international crisis with the Prime Minister. The royal family have let it be known that at this time of crisis they wish very much to be at the heart of the nation. The two younger members of the family have remained behind in Scotland. At a time when preparations are in hand to evacuate most of the capital's children, it seems unlikely that Princesses Elizabeth and Margaret will be coming back to London soon.
And so the nation continues to gird itself for war. The task of removing all name signs which could be visible from the air has been going on all day. And the Home Office has said that in the event of war, all theatres and cinemas will close until the threat of air attack has been assessed. A report from our Home Affairs correspondent, David Sells.
Air raid precautions are a pressing priority. The Home Office today ordered the partial manning of report and control stations, responsible in time of war for dispatching ambulances, firemen or decontamination squads to hotspots in a raid. Some 2 million British civil defence workers are now enrolled. Government departments are emptying their vaults of records for safekeeping outside the capital. Theatres and cinemas must be made blast-proof, shelters provided for staff. If war breaks out, the Home Office announced today, all will be shut for a period. One old-fashioned entertainer, though, defying the gloom of a trial blackout, will be able to say, "I never closed." The colour khaki is daily more visible on our streets. Territorials, in particular, are manning strategic points on railways and at public buildings. And at London docks today, a reminder of the turmoil that is already Europe. George Lansbury, chairman of the Polish Refugee Fund, boarded the steamer Warszawa to welcome 70 youngsters aged from 3 to 16, Polish Jews expelled from Germany. They can stay in Britain till they're 18, then they'll be sent to the United States or the Empire. Foster parents for 20 of them have still to be found.
David Sells reporting. The government has issued a special film appealing for civil defence volunteers. Using examples taken from the war in Spain 3 years ago, it's directed at people who have medical training.
War has shown us only too grimly that bombs are no respecters of persons. All suffer alike, old or young, rich or poor. And the work of stretcher bearer or first aid party is a real man's job. Today, Britain is in urgent need of men stretcher bearers and first aid parties. They are wanted immediately for training. We appeal also to women car drivers. If you can drive a car, you can be trained to drive a light ambulance. For both these vital services, men and women are asked to register with their local council. The need is urgent. Enroll now.
In Poland, more men have been called up, and on its borders there have been more violent incidents, grenades, bombs and shooting. In the free city of Danzig and in the corridor of territory vital to Poland, which Germany seeks to control, tension is high. Our correspondent in Warsaw, Tim Sebastian, now reports.
Here, more than anywhere else, the movement of German troops is causing mounting concern. Warsaw said today it believed Germany had now completed mobilization and strongly protested to Berlin at the advance into Slovakia. Polish concern appears well-founded. Along its borders with Germany, the number of violent incidents has been rising sharply. In Tarnów, 18 civilians are reported dead after an explosive device blew up a left luggage office. Bombs have also been discovered along the railway line linking Kraków and Katowice. In the Poznan area, machine gun fire and hand grenades have been traded across the border. Despite the Germans' military build-up, there are some here who still believe war can be avoided, but that number is decreasing. Hitler's assertion that he wants a real understanding with Poland has been heard but given little credence. The resumption of anti-Polish propaganda and the sound of marching boots seem to many to offer a much clearer message.
Germany's 51,000-ton luxury liner Bremen is tonight being held by the United States authorities in New York. It's being searched to make sure it's not trying to smuggle military supplies from America. Last night, the ship received orders from Germany to return home at once without passengers or cargo. But President Roosevelt has said no vessel will be allowed to leave an American port armed for offensive purposes, and officials are on board searching for guns and other weapons. Other news, here at home, an unexpected torrential downpour over Birmingham has brought the worst flooding to the area for many years. The River Ouse has completely burst its banks, and there have been landslides and damage to road and rail as a result. Drivers have been forced to abandon their cars. People have been trapped in their homes. The thunderstorm lasted for 3 hours over much of the county of Staffordshire. It was the heaviest rainfall there for 30 years. Cricket and Yorkshire have once again won the county championship. It's the 3rd time in a row and the 12th time since the war. The crown became theirs as Middlesex proved unequal to the formidable task set them by Surrey, just under 5 hours to score 426 runs. The match ended in a draw and the points went to Surrey for their first innings lead. In the city, there was a strong rally based on hopes that war may still be averted. The pound climbed. It finished 10 cents up at $4.38. But the price of gold today slipped 4 shillings an ounce to 157 shillings. The huge drain of gold continues. In 4 days to yesterday, gold worth more than £24 million was shipped to North America. One Hatton Garden expert said a rush was expected of people cashing in their gold watches, cigarette cases and dentures. The average heavy gold wedding ring is fetching about £3. And finally, the main news once more. At Downing Street tonight, Mr. Chamberlain and his advisers are studying Hitler's reply and considering Britain's next move. The Prime Minister says there is still hope that war may be avoided. And that was the news tonight, Tuesday, the 29th of August, 1939. From the BBC in London, good night.